Oh, this is exciting, man. Chillers, here's a chance to score big with Jack Daniels. Woo! All you got to do is buy a 750ml bottle of Jack Daniels Tennessee whiskey between the 1st of November until the 31st of December 2024 and stand a chance to win a PlayStation 5 every week until the end of December.
Yeah. We're not playing around here, man.
Bible.
We're giving away a PlayStation 5 from now until the end of December. Every fucking week.
That's a lot of PlayStation.
Yeah. So all you gotta do is purchase a 750 bottle of Jack Daniels, keep the receipt or online invoice, scan the QR code or visit our website. Follow the steps, upload your receipt and bottle picture and submit your entry. Each purchase counts as one entry. So the more bottles you buy, the more chances you have. Make sure your contact details are spot on. Enter as many times as you like, and remember, ask the
Show in Joburg. Eshabanye bancane la endlini, but ulilizela mlilizeli. I don't think.
I don't know.
No chance.
No,
This is my moment of being
Schoolers. I don't know.
And also now with the influence of black coffee, Mapumulo, it's like it's intensified.
Isn't his name Nati?
Surname Mapumulo.
Oh, you know him by surname basis.
They're homeboys, bro. Like they boys. Like
No.
good friends.
But why am I saying all of this? Sorry, Makhosi. There are knowledge systems that exist outside of the confines of curriculum or syllabus. So when I went to school,
hold back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. And today we got a legendary guest in the building.
Bro.
One of the biggest jazz artists to come out of South Africa. Please make some noise for Nduduzo MAKHATHINI.
so much fam.
Thank you, man.
Fair, man. Appreciate you, bro.
Where are you flying from? You look like you just landed.
From Devon.
Okay.
Yeah, I landed from South America a few days ago, but had to go home.
Yeah.
And now
So where you been this year? Where have you traveled this year?
Oh man, a lot in the US. I started winter there in January already, and then I did Europe as well, like quite a stretch. I was on tour for like 3 months.
Wow.
And so I recently did the US again, and the last tour I did was in South America. And Brazil, Argentina, and I was in Colombia for the first time.
Wow, Colombia.
Yeah. So I'm taking a little break, and then I start on Monday again.
Does it bother you that like you get so much love outside of SA, not necessarily in SA?
Man, I think like SA has a lot of love for me. It's just packaged in a different way. And the cultures are different everywhere around the world. And so I'm starting to really understand that. Like, SA historically has gone through so much. And some of the people can't really afford to come check our gigs out. I remember playing the Cape Town Jazz and people saying like, man, we want to come, but it's gotten too expensive for us.
That's crazy.
So I understand there are those like, socio-political dynamics that are at play with these things. But I know South Africa, no better place, man. No better place.
Can you tell me, I've always wondered, can you tell me the origin of jazz music? Like where did it start?
Right. Well, in the true history of it is really the Black Atlantic. It's through like slaves that were taken from West Africa. And that whole entire violence and this feeling of displacement and to lose the sense of home. And so it came as a music that was protesting against this kind of violence of displace. And that is in the US. And of course, fast forward in the 20s in South Africa.
1920s.
Yeah, in South Africa already, like through the ports, like people, like places like Durban, Cape Town, East London, people started to encounter African American music. And that's how it really started in South Africa. At first, people were imitating, for the most part, their African American counterparts. And eventually, people started to contemplate their own indigenousness. And we started to think about our own troubles of displacement that kind of stem out of like the Land Areas Act, forced removals, and all of these catastrophic moments in apartheid. And so I guess similarly in South Africa, if you think about 1976, you think about the Soweto uprising, you can't think about that moment and not kind of think about the soundtrack, which was Omar Miriam Makeba or Babu Abdullah Ibrahim. I think at one point, Ibrahim actually had a song called Manenberg that had become like an unofficial anthem for South Africa. So I think jazz really plays at this very difficult moment of like losing one's identity, losing place, losing your own freedoms. And it kind of speaks against that and kind of like makes its way to producing alternatives for the ones that are displaced, for the ones that are disadvantaged. So I guess like, at a much kind of deeper level, that's where jazz comes from. But as an art form in terms of its like aesthetic sensibilities, of course it borrows from various styles, indigenous styles, Western harmonies and stuff like that. But I'm more interested in the historical kind of thing about it. Yeah.
Because what's crazy, if you listen to a lot of music, even till this day, it's influenced by jazz. You look at house music, Afro pop.
Even sampling, even hip hop a lot.
Yeah.
Hip hop for years, like they've been sampling jazz music. I think, I can speak for Black people, like the yearning for freedom is maybe what draws us to this music. I mean, aesthetically, it's a beautiful music and it's very like kind of, it opens these invitations. But I think more than anything, jazz is constantly seeking this freedom. And, even post-colonial South Africa, there are senses in which we're still kind of under this arrest in some ways. I sense that a lot in academia and kind of thinking about jazz as this protesting narrative, even within these confines.
Craziest thing is there was a series I was watching and it was about the whole jazz revolution.
Dope.
And in America, it's crazy. They, when it was starting to blow up, right?
Right.
They used to get like white girls from the suburbs come to the hood because they loved jazz, and they started banning jazz. Like they started banning jazz, they started banning weed as well. Because back then the white people didn't want their kids mingling with other with Black people.
Yeah.
Right. But that was the sound that was popping right then.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's true. I think also, I think what we often omit in this moment of modernity when like jazz has this, I was talking to someone earlier today, I'm here to play at the Joy of Jazz with Nduduzo. And I was talking to someone earlier today about how beautiful jazz used to be when the Joy of Jazz used to be hosted in Newtown, where it was like the creative epicenter. Like you found all the scholars there, all the thinkers, the free minds in Newtown, and how challenging it is to kind of absorb and listen to this music in a place like Sentin. So I think it plays into what you're saying about like, initially this was a dance music.
Wow.
This jazz came, people were accompanying dancers, And I think that's revealing in the ways in which our orientation towards dance as Africans as well. And if we start thinking about jazz more critically as like a thing that we exported by way of this unfortunate moment in history of slavery. So I think dance-related musics at the core of them speak to the same agenda that jazz was pursuing in the beginning. But when jazz was then put in a theater, in a club, in a concert hall, it left the township, it left the ghetto. And I think these are some of the things that we're trying to explore. It's like, I look at my calendar and think, how many times did I play for my people? And my people in a sense of like, there are these uncles that are like, yeah, we hear that you play. When I go see my mom in the townships, they're like, yeah, but as schools, So for me, there's this conflicting thing about this yearning for freedom on the one hand, and on the other hand, this complete kind of checking out of our own societies. And I mean, that could be related to the ways in which we need to earn a living as well.
Yeah, of course.
And so, but then it troubles really the agenda. Like this, I feel it in Europe, like when I start to feel like, oh man, like the black body again, like all of these people watching. And I get annoyed sometimes. I'm like, man, we're playing a music that is almost watching you. And this idea of being watched kind of takes us back to catastrophic histories. I mean, we think about umsamo and all of these.
I was thinking about the same thing when you
it
mentioned
gives
that.
off that.
Like it becomes like a zoo.
Like an exhibition,
It's an exhibition, it's a zoo. And like, so for me, like while I'm doing these touring schedules and everything, I'm kind of like cognizant of like the ways in which like I'm kind of protesting the zoo approach. And it's funny you should mention the zoo and the exhibition. Like a lot of my friends, when they come to, it's like, hey man, I'm going to Africa. I'm like, where? In the US. They're like, yeah, no, Africa. I said, bro,
where?
This is a continent. Where in Africa are you going?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, motherland. No, bro. Like, stop. You really need to tell us where you're going. But there's this abstract sense. And then when they eventually get here, I'm like, what's on your itinerary? It's like, man, we're going to the park. We need to see animals. And normally I don't see a mention of like, I'm going to go to Umkumba and I'm going to go to Soweto. There's nothing about the people. So something really political about third world countries and the politics of hegemony, as it were, the ways in which like the Euro-American narratives always dominate. And people don't come here to really see us. They want to see us perform. You know what I mean? Like, so the same thing, like the animals are kind of caged in these zoos. And we, in some ways, are caged in the airports and stuff when we start playing our marimbas there. And of course, people are earning a living. But I wonder how much do we lose by kind of like putting our music out in that way, like a kind of tourist thing. So this touring business for me is very conflicted with a lot of thinkings about like commodifying this thing, like particularly as it relates to the idea of healing, sebenzisa itongo. And what is the place of itongo in really the exhibition, in the zoo? Like, what are the implications of taking umsebenzi wabadala and kind of like exposing it to such frameworks?
Well, you look at the bank balance and then it makes sense. And then you're like, okay.
Yeah, if I have my daughter, my kids and my wife, like, it's kind of the bank balance. The bank balance is quite a thing, bro.
I want to talk about your journey into jazz because I mean, obviously, your family saw your gift.
Sure.
And you blew up. You've worked with amazing people that we're going to talk to about later.
Right.
But just kind of like for our chillers who might not know your journey, how would you like describe it? Like how you fell in love with this beautiful art?
Man, I think it was by chance. I come into studying music formally, not even knowing what I was there to do. Like, I was frustrated. Like, I came from, I'm born in the beginning of the 80s, and there was just like this relationship to work that was so inherent that when you matriculate, you have to go work. So I finished school and I started working for a bank. But I did this job that was really like hurting for the most part. They called it scoring. I don't know if it's still called the same thing. But what you would do is people were applying for loans and mostly to take kids to school. And I was one of those kids that couldn't go to school because there was no money. But then in this scoring process, I would decline most of the people. And this one
Scoring, you're talking about like scoring.
like bank, like they looking at your credit record,
okay. Oh, yes,
and
yes.
declining,
credit score,
declining by way of credit score.
Got you.
And I was like, there was this aunt that came and she was like, "Ngenze njani mntanam?" That question, like, man, it really like it bothered me. Like I couldn't stop hearing it. When she was declined, I was like, yeah, the credit score, it's not working out.
This isn't the boost of apartheid.
Right. And Uti Mama, and I want to take my kid to school. That's all I want this loan for. And he's probably going to get a job, or she's going to get a job and start working and pay this money back. And that day I decided, no, I can't be sitting here in the same position with all of these people that come in and not being able to help while I'm not getting help myself. And I just, from Pietermaritzburg, I took a taxi to Durban, like not really knowing what I was going to do, like in my work uniform. And I landed in MAKHATHINI, it's like super loud. And I'm kind of a rural kid too. So I was like, it's a win here. I used to go there just like once a year, and I would stand outside even, and stuff. So, but this time I walked through this place and I had this sound. And it was at the time Technical Natal. This is where Mondli Ngcobo went, Black Coffee went, Zakes Bandwini went, Ngubeko Mbatha went, Omagugu went, everybody went there. And so I was like, the sound, man. Then I walked in. They were like, how can we help you? I was like, yeah, I'm just loving the sound. They're like, no. This is a school of music. Yeah, people studying music. I didn't realize there was such a concept. I was like, yeah, I would like to study music. You play an instrument? Yeah, just that confidence. And of course, I walked in there. The first thing they start laughing, like more like the idols, like walking in there, like uniform as a bank and stuff. And they're like, can you play something? And of course, fast forward, that's really how I landed there. And a couple of weeks later, I would learn that this is a jazz program. So all I'm saying is like, I had no idea what jazz was. I had no idea why I went to Durban, had no idea what a jazz program would look like. I thought it was just a music program. So I don't want to take any credit like, yeah, I went to study jazz. No, I wasn't aware. It was just by chance. And when I realized like 6 months later that this was such boring music and it was too late already. Kind of. Yeah. But hope my jazz community doesn't kill me but really sounded boring.
What were you listening to then? And also, could you play an instrument when they said play an instrument? And where did that come from?
Yeah, my mom used to play. And I had this habit of just watching her play. And if my memory serves me well, I wasn't interested in the sound. Just loved the way that her fingers would move on the thing. I was like, this is great. So I picked up some patterns there and kind of presented those.
Wow, man.
Yeah, so more from like a kind of pattern geometric sense more than a sonic sense. So all of this stuff is like crazy, like for me, like looking back, it's like, it's all of the things that they don't really connect. But I guess, being in a journey is about realizing the impossible.
And would you say the 2000s is when you blow up?
The 2000s?
Yeah. Is that when you would say like, okay, now you're really, really blowing up now?
Oh, yeah, in the early 2000s?
Yeah.
Like around 2006.
Yeah.
There was a show in Joburg. Eshabanye bancane la endlini, but ulilizela mlilizeli. I don't think.
I don't know.
No chance.
Mina
No, this is my moment of being.
Schoolers. I don't know.
There used to be a TV show called Lilizela Mlilizeli.
Leleti Khumalo. Yeah.
No. Allow me, bro. This was like a TV show that would like kind of feature artists in a really dope way, and they would like play some of their songs and have interviews. And there was one of my mentors, Ubaba Andile Nana, he is from King Williamstown. And he also went to UKZN and studied there. So he invited me when I was doing my last year, maybe 2005, doing my last year. And he was like, do you want to play in this show? And that's really what set me up in Joburg, because I got a chance to play with Babu Oliver Mtukudzi, Babu Jabu Kanyile, Ata Mufukati, and everybody. I got to play with everybody. And of course, when I landed in Joburg, the first gig I did, like full time in the band, was Lebo Mathosa, one of the most amazing musicians. And of course, the jazz community at that time is like, you study jazz, you graduate and play with Lebo Mathosa. And so for me, these genres have always been blurred. I've always been about fellowship. And
Wait, did you do any of her songs?
Dangerous, of course. I played all of their stuff.
That's you?
Yeah, I played all of that. Yeah, for I think a good 3-4 years. 3-4 years with Lebo Mathosa.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nothing with Boom Shaka, just her, ne?
I would have loved that though.
Yeah.
Boom Shaka would have been dope. But I mean, of course, this was like the closest I could come.
Wow.
And I mean, I grew up and she was so humble. I remember there used to be rehearsals at the baseline at the time. And so I walked in there. I like to really show up early for stuff because, I think I'm really slow and I always have to orientate myself. So I came there early and there was this sister that was sitting there and we were waiting for Lebo Mathosa. Of course, I told her, I was like, yo, is this the correct room for the Lebo Mathosa rehearsal? I was, yeah, they're coming, all of the guys, yeah. So we hang out, and only to find out when the rehearsal starts, the same lady is like, okay, guys, so that's Lebo.
Oh.
That's the amount of humility. I always knew her from the screens. Mostly dancing and stuff, never really paid attention to how she looked. So I was hanging out with her like this whole time. And I was like, so Jerry, it's like, no, it's all cool.
Yeah.
But like the level of humility. And for me, I'd rather go with that, really.
What was the scene like there? Are you getting paid as a session musician for Dangerous or like, how did it work back then? Yeah.
No. I didn't record the original, like the actual recording of it. I just did the performance.
Oh, the live show.
The live shows. The live shows. And I know you kids about royalties. No, bro. I
know.
No, I was warned, bro. I know all the ticks. Yeah. They said, I'll make G about royalties. Don't talk about No. MacG is going to confuse you with royalties.
Yes. Okay, so you're just playing for performance sake.
Yeah, and the music that we actually composed for her, she passed on before she could record. And one of the songs, and I hope I'm not messing up the details, Demo Skosana.
Yes, Demo.
Took the song and gave it to Sisbusi, I think.
Yes, Ubusi, yes.
Yeah, and that was one of my songs initially written for Lebo Mathosa, which she really loved. But, she passed on and then we Demo recorded the song.
Who else are you playing for at this time? It's just her?
It's her, it's Zamajobe, it's Impuretana, it's Mtunzi Namba, it's Jabu Kanyile, Jabu Shongwane at the time. It's Ata Mufukati. Like I was in his band as well for a while, playing Mnige and all of that music. Yeah, for real.
Wow.
Now, doesn't it get boring? Like, because you're a jazz artist, and a song like Mnige, for example, it's like maybe 5 chords, and that's it throughout the song. How do you balance the urge to express? Because jazz is so and improvise, because it's quiet though, man. It's a loop.
It's a loop, right? I think I'm first a musician. I'm first an art. I'm first a human being. And I think for me it's important, I'm sorry, to keep this kind of sequence. Human being, artist, musician that happens to study jazz. And I think in that sequence, then you can see what I would prioritize is the most musical space as opposed to like a genre political thing. So, I love playing loops, man.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, I love doing that stuff. And also now with the influence of Black Coffee, Mapumulo, it's like, it's intensified.
Isn't his name Nati?
Surname, Mapumulo.
Oh, you know him by surname basis?
They're homeboys, bro. Like, they're boys. Like,
No.
good friends. Uma ngena ubani maphumulo. What's maphumulo?
First name Mason. Oh, there's another level.
Different level.
Mashimane as well. Mashimane,
yes.
which is like the clan name.
Yes.
So, but that's like, it's quite a thing from where I come from. Like, even if there is like 2 years difference between you already, like, yeah. So we hardly ever use like our first names in relating to
Does
each
he
other.
approach you, Unati?
Yeah, so he I think someone told him about me, because at the time when I come to Technical, Natal is graduating.
Yes.
But Shana is like,
That's
at the
booming,
time,
yeah.
that was the thing. Like, we used to go and watch them play at the Playhouse. There was Umambu Simhlongo as well, who was a big influence to Shana, by the way.
Yes, true.
And of course, later, Mapumulo would remix some of these pieces. But then we didn't know each other then. But just recently, I think 2 years ago, there was a picture of me and him. It's online, that together. And I'm like, no, I don't recall this moment. We both. So we had met a while ago, but to really connect, it was over Music is King.
Yes, with Wish You Were Here and them,
Yeah. Wow, this cat. Yeah, I played on Wish You Were Here. I played on Ilala with Monji. Played on the one with Saki. And then I played on Muye.
Is this live performance, or you mean
on the album?
On
Music
the
is
album
King.
and live performance. I think we did some of it for Tiny Desk. But we did, man, this story, I didn't think it was funny, but my kids really think it's funny. So there was this Music is King launch that was at the Dome.
Yeah.
Were you there?
No, we weren't invited. We're not.
No, next time. No.
I remember it was a big thing.
Everybody wanted to be there.
Yeah, I think like 20,000 people.
Yes.
That was crazy for me. So I go out there and of course, like, still very much in this jazz space, like my community is small in that sense. So, and of course, like 20,000 people, I'm like, wow.
Crazy.
I mean, I only see this in Europe. I never thought like I could play for 20,000 people in South Africa. And so after the gig, of course, we end the gig and the people come, of course, to see Mapumulo. Ricky Rick was there.
Yes.
We collaborated as well. We were quite close and thinking about making music together. Yeah, so, but then everyone is going to these dudes, and they were like about 3-4 people that came like looking for me. Wow. And I was amazed. I was like, yeah. So when I tell my kids,
20,000, not bad.
I tell my kids, I was like, but that's the thing. I tell my kids, I'm like, they like, that show was big. I was like, yeah, 20,000 people. And you know what? 4 came specifically just for me. And also adding my younger brother there. Yeah. And my wife was there and her twin. Yeah. So I had about 7 people.
I want to ask you, because as I mentioned back, like all of the music, even now, even with piano, it's all inspired by jazz in some way or form, right?
Big time.
So from when you started at the
Technical Natal.
Yes. To where music has developed. And bear in mind, when I'm asking this question, I'm also thinking about, your Africanicity, how much you love the heritage of Africa.
Right.
Like, how has it developed for you, like, musically? Like, how would you describe that journey from, being a part of Lebo Mathosa, Black Coffee, and then now there's a Kabza, and then there's, you know what I mean?
And I'm really excited to, someone put out a tweet, was it a tweet on Facebook that, like, kind of like comparing me and Kabza, because he's a pianist as well. Yeah. They like, he will tear you apart.
Someone said Kabza will tear you apart. No, man. I love Kabza, but...
No, but I was like, well...
Piano.
Yeah, but so I was like, okay, maybe we should make this happen.
Yes.
So I'm really... And then I saw him this other time. I was with Msaki.
Yeah.
And so they came. But I think I was too shy to speak to him. But really looked like an open person.
Oh, no.
Very open-minded too.
Extremely.
Super musical.
It's about the music.
Yeah, man. So, and when I saw him working with an orchestra, I was like, okay, I see why people think you'll tear me apart, bro. Let's go. But yeah, man, that evolution for me is important, bro. Like, you know,
Can you describe it like the way you see it, man? What's been going on?
Yeah, I think South Africa has always been at the forefront of like inventing the next move. Except, again, these politics of first world and third world. Yeah. But I mean, when you look at what like Kelvin Momo is doing now, it's like that's the last album is so jazzy.
That's jazz. It's jazz.
In fact, he sent a message that he wanted me to be on the album.
Whoa!
But then it never really worked. It never really worked. I guess maybe schedules and stuff. But when I heard the album, I was like, I see why you thought I could be on the album. But why am I saying all of this? Sorry, Makhosi.
This kid is saying something. You heard it somewhere. It fits in. You heard it somewhere in Sherry Lesbian. Ever since. There's no idea. We can't see it. I know I'm cool.
You heard it from Shaka Zulu or somewhere.
No, something else.
You never know genetics, eh? I mean, bro, like that Dabezita just dropped.
Yes.
Yeah, man. So I think the evolution is again maybe to Maphumulo's idea, music is king. So the idea of music is king was the fact that the ultimate thing is the music. Music is king. Music is the highest, not all of these genres. So while I'm steeped in the practice of jazz, and I must also just make a disclaimer that my connection to jazz is really around notions of freedom, notions of improvisation. And these notions are inherently sensibilities of African music anyway. So I'm just trying to say that we should stop thinking of jazz as something that we import, but as something that is born out of our own instinct as Africans. So I think that kind of brings it closer. But now in terms of like this amapiano, for instance, I'm like, the instrument I play, for instance, has never been so popular. So now when someone asks me, what do you do? I don't even talk about being a lecturer and stuff. I'm like, I'm a piano. And people are like, yeah, we're my piano. Yeah. So my instrument has never gotten this popular. Yeah, just to say you're a pianist now sounds so dope.
Yeah.
So I think like we have to honor that. And I think I'm like part of a generation of people that still learn pretty much from, I mean, my teachers were Ubaba Mselegu, Mambusi Mhlongo, Babzi Mngqawana. These are people that I recorded with extensively and taught with. But also these were people that were very forward thinking. So, I mean, I recall Babzi Mngqawana working with Skara Camp. Do you guys remember that? Yeah. Mambusi Mhlongo has been remixed everywhere. Ubaba Mselegu. So I think even my teachers were hip to the idea of evolution and not in a purist kind of perspective, not clinging onto things, but allowing things to kind of evolve. So I don't want people to be surprised if I play amapiano someday.
You know, I'm asking you that because you've been a spectator through different musical generations, if I may say, right? Because you started off, you're listening to Mam Miramakeba.
Of course.
Boom, boom, boom. And I'm thinking at that time, everything they're playing live,
Right.
It's not digitized, nothing is computerized. Cool. Then comes this Kwaito generation, your Lebo Mathosa, where I think it's just about, 1994 is calm, we're now free, we can do whatever we want. It's just an explosion of freedom, right? And then comes Black Coffees who've studied this music now and now want to implement what they've studied into the music, right? And then here comes Amapiano where like it's just a fusion of, I don't think we've ever spoken about ancestors and African heritage more than we have with this genre. Like I don't think they ever. So that's what I'm trying to understand. How's your view, like as a spectator?
Man, I think I think it's very precise what you say, but what happens is that we never really leave anything behind. For me, when I hear my piano, I'm like thinking trumpets, but because the pulse, the tempos are the same. Some of the beats actually are the same. And I think, given that some of us were really fortunate to study music, but a lot of people are just sitting with their laptops, and we can't sit here and say everyone must play an instrument or nothing should happen. So I think part of my mind is like thinking about the digital world and how that's evolving. And but the fact that we are still invited into Amapiano recordings and people still feel there is value in like human feel. I think for me, hybridity is what I'm seeing. And I think the more we succumb to that, and again, I'm reminded of a case where Mapumulo comes to one of our gigs and he was like diagnosing a problem in a sense. And he's like, man, this was a great show. I'm like, thank you for coming, And he's like, but I think there is a problem with small audiences. I was like, a problem with small audiences? Yeah. And he says, like, it seems to be the same audience that goes to every jazz musician's gig. I was like, but how is that a problem? We're creating an awareness. He says, if one or two people decide to say they don't like how you play and tell each other, that's it, it's over. And so there's a problem of small spaces and small audiences. And I had never thought of it that way. And he was like, also, this genre is not tested. Jazz in South Africa is not tested. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, just book the biggest venue and go see if people are going to come. And I was like, it's a criticism, and maybe it's harsh coming from a big brother. And, I'm almost having to sit and think about what he's saying. But I think what he's really saying is that there should be an open invitation of hybridity. If he's got all of those numbers and me and him are friends.
Oh, magic.
We should be potentially bringing all of those numbers and they become aware of what I'm doing. And chances are those people would then follow my gigs elsewhere. Yes. But also I'm very mindful that my 4 people will follow him as well. so it's like a very fair, in my books, a very fair exchange. I'm like, bro, I saw you were playing here. You had how many people? 30,000, bro. 4 came from me. Yeah. So I think when people see, because audiences really base everything on what they see. Yeah. Even just hanging out, like we have a group called Abatidieli. Abatidieli is Mondli Ngobo, Black Coffee, and myself. So Abatidieli is a producers kind of group. So every day we're exchanging stuff on WhatsApp and producing together.
Wow. Whoa.
Right. But imagine what it would mean.
I'm not in that group as well.
No, I'm a producer.
Musicians, boy.
But ungangena.
Put your name on the
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm thinking update. These are my keywords. Like we need to update our consciousness about genre and music. We need to think about hybridity. We need to think about longevity. We need to think about immortalizing our sounds. For instance, what happens when Da Capo takes King Fella and remixes it? I mean, this is a song that I recorded in 2015. And it was okay. It was great. People loved it. But when Da Capo took the song...
It's a monster. It's a monster.
Now, imagine if I was like a purist and be like, no, I don't want Abafana to play with my song.
Which is what Simpiwe Dana did.
Yes, that's what Simpiwe Dana doesn't want her song music sampled.
Yeah, by Coffee.
Right, by Coffee, yes. Well, it started there, but generally she even said that she doesn't want generally people sampling because they make a mess of it. You know, how do you feel about that when an artist says, because I feel like the music is for the world. And truly, sometimes you as a purist or a jazz musician who studied will feel like it's a mockery of your work, but the young people, there's someone who connects with that.
Man, I think for me, it's like, there's definitely no way we can ignore the genius that Kabza the small is. So for me, a musician should be someone who can sense what can I say, who can sense like excellence. And that's really what draws me to. So I wouldn't really work with someone who does amapiano at a low level. That's what I'm trying to say. But there is a language of excellence that is translatable.
Undeniable.
Yeah.
Like so for me, if a dude is excellent at what they do, and I hope I bring something as well, then it's a deal. So I'm not so. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and advocate for jazz. I'm really a musician and a human being more than anything. And like, I guess the space of research has helped me as well. The space of research in the way that, like, each time you research or each time you read a book, you realize how much you don't know. And I think this is what music is doing to me. Wow. Each time the cats about Didier sent a file, I'm like, who is that? Wow, that is so dope. And I think that's the excitement I want to keep. I don't want to be like some kind of guru. I really just want to be available for the music.
I want to talk about your historianism. Like, you're a historian, right?
Right.
I'm guessing in African culture, right?
Right.
Does that tie into the music, or is just that like a passion project? You know, you just really want to find out where you come from, the soil, and where, you know what I mean?
I'm interested very much in history, and by profession, of course, they would call me a musicologist. That's what I do at the university, or ethnomusicology. And so my interest in that came also as like, it came from a problem. There is a violence that's in institutions, and this is the violence of the inability to come to grips with the fact that there are knowledge systems that exist outside of the confines of curriculum or syllabus. So when I went to school...
hold back. Please repeat that. Let me hear that. Curriculum. We can say
PhD. That's it.
When no metric.
No. But the thing is, like, when in 1976,
yes, sir,
when people were like, we cannot afford to have Afrikaans as a medium of instruction.
Gotcha.
That what it meant was like mathematics in Afrikaans, physics in Afrikaans. And what all of these things were designed to do is to kind of suggest that a black subject is less intelligent than a white counterpart.
Gotcha.
And so if you try fast forward that into decolonization of the curriculum, or fees must fall, or rows must fall. It's in the same kind of spirit. The difficulty in institutions to see ourselves. And this kind of invasion of the other, the colonial. I mean, if you look at like the fallism movements, really they were based on the fact that like, sifunde kanjani with all of these statues that inflict so much pain in our memory.
And trauma.
And violence.
Yeah.
So this idea of then like decolonization, you know, fell short when it came to, okay, decolonization, we're going to change the contents. It's fine. Uzoyifundi mathematics ngeXhosa or Gaswana or ngeZulu. But then they did not change the frameworks. So what changed was they translated from one language to another. Or at the very least, like kind of bring in some African literature into the awareness of the student. But just as an add-on, as an other. And I'm saying that there's a difficulty with this creation of the other. So when you think about how, for instance, a university will be situated close to a township. But the university in actual sense has nothing to do with the knowledges of the township. Let's use jazz as an example. In 1968-67, Intlupheko was recorded. Yakalinkomo, Babu Instin Mankunku was recorded. The only time that jazz was part of curriculum starts around 1983 by Darius Brubeck at UKZN. It was the first jazz program in the whole continent. So what does this tell us? Jazz was happening without schools. in a Western sense. So then the problem comes when the school is implemented, it ignores the knowledge systems of the people in the townships.
Gotcha.
So that's what I really mean by the violence of this discontinuity, in a sense that knowledge is already happening. Like, I mean, Mausekasi, like everything is really based on like knowledge. Kuna makhotmane that you can sit with the whole day, they channeling, bro. I'm like, usfunde pleasant. Like he never really went to school. When do we start to really acknowledge? I know there's RPL, which, you know, kind of acknowledges these forms of knowing. But I'm just saying we shouldn't go into this thing by way of RPL and like these kind of honorary doctorates. We just need to be included from the beginning. The university has to kind of speak from where it's situated.
So that's the problem that you're talking about, that you saw and you're like, I gotta learn this shit.
That's the problem I saw. I was like, okay, if my grandkids are gonna possibly go to a university, I need to change something.
Gotcha.
And so for me, what I needed to change was like, there is an urgency to see our people in curriculum, in study, in the books, everywhere.
And from the knowledge that you've acquired doing your research, what have you learned? Like, what are the biggest talking points?
Man, so much. And it's all the things that we take lightly. When I did my master's, I did studies on exile and the ways in which like people have been forcefully moved from out of the country. And so it was really based on the problems of the notion of home. What do we call home? Like, you know, most of us in our later lives kind of grew up in the township, and it's like, Gugu Peka, you know, that question really haunts Black people. But it haunts Black people even like in the US.
UK.
Like, yeah, but ekaya, you know, but no siyakuzo, but ekaya, no, it's in sentence, siyakuzo sentence, but where is home?
Yeah.
And so that was for my master's. And
Can you give us some insight during Exile? What is happening? Like,
Exile really was, you know, Babu Louis Nkosi writes beautifully about it. These were moments where jazz musicians and artists much broader could not really practice. The cops would just come and stop a gig. Like Obama Masegela, they were stopped, they were like violated, beshiwa, and all of this, arrested just for playing music.
they're not saying go home, guys.
No.
The license doesn't permit.
No.
Whatever. There's violence.
There was violence, and you couldn't play in the cities. We couldn't have like mixed race bands. For instance, a band such as the Blue Notes had a white person playing in it. And I remember reading a story that when they were traveling in the bus, he would be driving, and when he was stopped by the cops, he would say, "These are my slaves." This is painful, man. Like, these were his
And they
teachers.
friends
Like,
and
no,
teachers.
but even more, like, these are the guys that inspired him. And on the reverse, when he would come to play in New Brighton, Ebezdoba or something, and then he would say he was Indian, just to keep playing together. So these were some of the things that pushed people into exile. It was getting so violent in South Africa.
So you needed to leave the country so you can
You
play.
needed to. I mean, Miriam Makeba helped a lot in, like, we were just dying here and no one knew it was happening to us, because this is the problem of the third world. I mean, if you think about things that are happening in Congo now or Rwanda.
Yeah, of course.
And the ways in which, like, if something happens in Germany, it's definitely a world war.
Ukraine.
World war. But if something happens in Congo, it's
No
not a
one
world war,
cares.
it's just a war in Congo.
Yeah.
And so that challenges our thinking around globality. We are not part of the global. Things that happen in Africa are not global things.
Did you go in exile?
No.
He was born in 82, man.
Making
That's
sure.
5 years older than you.
Making sure. Okay. Which countries are they going? They're going to like UK.
Yeah, mainly it was the UK, London by extension. We are a former British colony.
Gotcha.
So we never actually needed visas back then. I remember touring there with Usin Piwe many years ago. I never needed a
visa,
to go there, but now we do. But it was London, it was Switzerland in Zurich, for instance, and Basel. Babu Ibrahim actually was launched there I think it was in Zurich with umamsetima Bia Benjamin by Duke Ellington, who's like the godfather for jazz music. But Omamule Tambulu, Babu Kefa Simenya, they were in the US.
Wow. So they found refuge there.
Yeah, people were going to different places. Bobby Pegimseleg was in Sweden. Yeah, but also there was internal things as well, like people going to Angola.
Yeah,
that was like strategic and political. Like someone like Babu Jonas Gwangwa was part of Amandla Freedom Ensemble, something like that. They were out there as the wing of the ANC, for instance, like doing activations. Cool.
So you're talking about Exile, right?
Exile.
Another thing that you learned?
Well, the last thing for my PhD was really around rituals. And rituals was, again, a way of like kind of stepping out of this modality of performance, this modality of exhibition, this modality of kind of like a zoo. What are African peoples doing when they play music? It's definitely not performance. And my argument was that given the history of being colonized, slave trade made a commodity, and what Fanon has said, like a subhuman, and Babu Biko has spoken about like a non-being, it's impossible to perform. So what is it that we are doing? And I make my own argument that we are involved in rituals. And I say rituals because people were playing music to transcend the reality that was so difficult to them. And through performance, you cannot transcend because you are entertaining. But through a ritual state, you are going beyond the limitations of the body. Malopo, for instance, about Philip Dabane, I think he's a perfect example of someone that was not dealing with performance. Bob Dabane was dealing with Malombo, or Malopo. It depends whether in Venda or Shangaan. But in those spheres, people understand music to be a healing practice. So that's the thing I've been learning about. Like, how do we like kind of conscientize our sound so that it produces healing potency? Silapha kanjani ngomculo? And that's been the fundamental question for me. And I mean, I guess it makes connections with people like Abo Thandiswa, who are interested in similar things, I mean, even in her last album, the collaboration was really about like, how do we heal these old traumas? How do we create sound as a safe space where we can speak about these things that are otherwise difficult to just speak to people about?
But that's what I'm saying. With Beyond, I've never heard a genre like that because that's all they preach in all the songs. Yeah. Like, whether it's Nkosazana's daughter, Youngster, Amos, Kusela.
It's Kusela is one of my favorite songs.
Yeah. It's one of the favorite songs.
But here's the crazy,
a good friend as well. But
here's the crazy thing. There's a million Kuselas.
Oh, I'm talking about the Msaki one.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Msaki one. No. I'm saying like there's a million songs that make you feel
that heal.
Okay, I get you. I was like, okay.
Like, yo,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right. But I think there is an insurgence. Like back then, and I think history becomes important.
Yes.
Because when the missionaries came, we were all Christianized. And being Christian also was part of it. Being born again specifically was leaving behind. And what did we leave behind? Who we are. And there was this urgency to leave behind. And that's why I'm always thankful to churches like the Zionist Church, Ushembe.
The Zionist is ZCC.
Yeah. Oh, again?
Yeah. Repeat.
Yo.
Khotso. Yeah. Ayat.
No, I got him now.
Yes.
Yeah, so those churches, in a deep way, they kind of like retained some of the nuances that otherwise were lost. Yeah. So when Christianity comes, remember we're in like a polygamist kind of society. And I don't want to talk about that. Like,
cool.
I'm just saying like,
got you.
What happens in a family where there was like ubaba or mama bekaya about 5. And he gets born again and he has to leave behind. Because remember, the missionaries said you have to take 1 out of the 5. And And these are some of the early kind of troubles of a black home, like when the black home was getting challenged by way of coloniality. Let alone that a black home was also challenged by the fact that migrant labor was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Like obaba bethu bawasebenza ezimayini. Then ubaba olusa inkomo, ubaba ngasabuya 2 years, ubaba olusa inkomo aduka ngene endlini wrong and stuff, and their kids, and like, you know, there are so many problems. And ubaba mayisebuya naye, he comes back with an entire tribe from Joburg. As we introduce her. When he retires, we're like, what? You know, so those are some of the problems that we normally isolate us of these problems of religiosity. So this is like, the Zionist Church kept those nuances. Ukuthi sizohamba senkonzweni sibuye siyophahla umsamo. Ushembe actually came about as like a kind of feminist movement.
Okay.
His idea was to look after all the mothers that were left behind by these men. So Shembe, like, his inception was a response to the problem of a black home.
Wow.
And kind of like very much like in today's narratives, they would say feminist movement. So like for me, these are some of the things that are historical catastrophes that when we talk on the everyday conversations, we don't really think that all of these problems stem from something and something that is historic. And the necessity, therefore, for the music to kind of speak to these things. So this insurgence of like healing, I think it's a yearning.
I might be going off topic, but how do you explain, because irregardless of 2024, 1994, 1984, 1964, the black on black hate, like where does that stem from, according to you? Because it's still prevalent today. Like, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's the borders that were created between black people, first and foremost. The borders, and when we started to believe in them. Remember, like Obama Masagela told us in his last album, they are so recent, the borders. Saying between like African peoples. Like narratives used to travel, like people used to know each other, used to sing each other's songs. And so when the borders were erected, it suggested an outsidersness, like where Sabalaikaya and of course the whole thing of tribes as well is recent in that sense, like of like Tina Sabangapa. And this is further intensified by what was called black on black violence. And for the most part in the 80s, this is what we grew up understanding was majorly between the NC and the Inkatha Freedom Party. And of course, these were funded by the same capitalists that were colonizing. So I'm not trying to say the whole blame is with whiteness, but there is a sense in which coloniality plays into these problems.
How did they do
By
it?
way of funding each other, finding people against each other. Like, you must create this movement, we're going to fund you against that movement.
But how does it last for generations, even after
Yeah, because we're in a capitalist system. Everyone is just trying to get something. And back then, that was never really our system. And our struggle with the capitalist system is that it's not our system. And we've inserted ourselves in it. We live in it. And we have to behave in that way. I mean, the things that are erupting in the US now about like black major problems with black male artists, the things that are coming out, they suggesting that, like, you know, we're going to give you this, but, you know, there's definitely a catch to everything. So I think black people have kind of like subscribed to these foreign concepts, and the catch is that we should be divided.
But where does that stem from? Because, I mean, look at someone like Sol. Sol is from, where are you from, Sol?
Where's home?
Home.
No, not that home.
But home.
Yeah,
Eastern Cape.
Yeah,
Eastern Cape,
mom,
yeah.
Eastern Cape. Yeah,
He's from Eastern
raised by
Cape.
my mom.
He's from Eastern Cape. I'm from Venda. But we're able to work cordially without any...
There's no friction.
Yeah, like-
based off of the backgrounds and how different they are, or ways from.
or anything
never.
of that.
Ever.
But it seems to be prevalent.
Man, it's driven heavily by politics as well, man. Because, like, you know, just general people don't have this problem. I think it's the educated, the quote-unquote educated that are pushing this agenda. Like, general people just meet on those bases of humanity.
Yeah.
And the basis of humanity is, I mean, in our greeting, we say, Sanbona.
Yeah.
Which the first thing is, I see you, I acknowledge you. And that's the greeting. I acknowledge you and the ones that accompany you. You know, so I think if we were to go really deep into like the cosmology of Blackness, this is a foreign concept. I mean, like the Basotho will say likai, for instance. More asking about where are you as opposed to how are you. And this is a thing that really speaks to the fact that Basotho and Botswana people believe in this Batumedi, these concepts of the stars. And when they say, where are you? They're asking, where are you situated in space? So the greeting alone was an acknowledgement of unity. Dumelang likai. Riteng, we are situated in space. So I'm trying to say that like anyone who is really steeped in an understanding of Black cultures or Bantu cultures or Kemetic histories would understand that we are one people. But the problem comes with modernity. It comes with coloniality, apartheid, and those divisions were so pronounced. And we believe in them. Politics believe in those divisions. I mean, like, if we look at the political structures in South Africa, they're very much tribal, all of them.
Oh, yes.
There's a deep sense of like...
Hence why MK would do so well.
Of course, because then it just stems off, it feeds on the Zulu-ness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's a problem with that to an extent where even when you advocate for something that is really for all Africans, we stack up with the Zulu-ness and we won't be able to see. So I think those are some of the challenges. And this is why we have to really consider humanity as like the way to move forward, because tribalism is like, it's so heavy, man.
Yeah.
It's really heavy and it has to.
You know, it's so crazy when you travel, you realize that every country has its own challenges.
Right.
And you look at, if we didn't have our challenges, what a country this would be, man.
Right.
Like, I think this would be the best country in the world, honestly. You've traveled around the world.
Yeah, man. I think South Africa is still the best country, man. I always come back here, you know, and I always tell people elsewhere, it's like, we have a very complex history. And it doesn't help that this history is invoked just like you stop at a traffic lights and some white person like Kupuli Fastela.
Yeah.
And it's invoked in one moment. It's like, why, when you see a black body, it's the problem of being criminalized. The black body is criminalized. Like Tinesne and Jebema airports, they even search your beard and stuff like that. It's like, so, but still, like South Africa, and when you come back home, we don't even get searched in South Africa. It's the only country where you just walk in. So I think it's still the best country, and we really have a broader bird's eye view to the world. The world doesn't know much about the world. No. South Africa knows a lot about the world.
Yes.
So somehow South Africa is the best country when it comes to our knowledge, our consciousness, our diversity.
Music.
I forget it. No one does it better. No one does it better. I mean, you're seeing what's happening in the world now. Like South Africa is on the map. Like anywhere I get, like it's a matter of seconds before I hear my piano song. You know, it's just like, and I mean, in the 60s, it took a second before you had Miriam Makeba. So over the years, we've been kind of at the forefront exporting knowledges through the music to the world.
Hey, I wanted to ask you, man, you mentioned something earlier about dancing. Dancing is spiritual, ne?
I want to believe so.
It is, man.
Yeah.
Jive.
Yeah, dog.
It's a emotion. It's
Jive.
no emotion.
See, that is the pen. But I think it is, because even in Sango,
No
when they
emotion.
do the drums and...
What's this, Jive?
Is it though spiritual?
Well, without like kind of like really zooming into what it is.
No, let's zoom in.
Should we?
Yes.
Yeah. When they speak about the ground, so the ground as a point of departure, in the Nguni creation story, we are told that Satabugo Shangen, we broke off the reeds, right? So there's this moment of the break, and the break would always have to do with emerging off the ground, like coming out of the ground. So magugidwa, normally there's like a kind of anchoring and reassuring our relationship to the soil. So when the feet hits the ground, it's a reassurance that I am of this very soil. So as a result, when I was born, like I couldn't practice this with my kids, but inkaba was a deep thing. My bizan, umbilical cord.
Yes.
And where the umbilical cord is buried is a very huge kind of coordinate for later magiwa pashwa. Because magiwa pashwa umsamo si connecta nokuthi inkaba. That's why this question of home, kukuphi ekhaya? No, kusasensini, kukuphi ekhaya? The question is really asking, ukuhlanganiswa kwakho nomhlaba, where did it happen?
So where's your umbilical cord buried?
Right. But also the significance of that being uhlanganiswe nini nomhlaba. Because we come to the world by way of a calling. NgesiZulu bathi ibizo. Ibizo is a name. So the name in itself is a technology for bringing you to the world. So that's why back then, before umama khulelwe ekhaya, umkhulu ikhehla elidala will dream of a name first. Sometimes years before. And the meditations or the chants of the village was to call that person into the name. Not when the person lands or when someone is pregnant, then we're like, hey, what are some of the hippest names? No.
Yeah, the hippest.
Yeah. But it was the name that brings you. So the name is believed to come from Abapansi. Abapansi being on the soil. So Abapansi and this idea of the underworlds is a very important aspect of Black cosmology or African cosmology. And again, it goes against the idea of uNkulunkulu osemafini, the God in the sky. So now we refer to gods in the underworlds. So when you dance, it's an invocation first of the fact that I am of this soil, and below this soil lives my gods. And inkaba yami was buried to be redirected to my gods, so that one day when I leave, I find it there and to return again. So it's a serious kind of spiritual
Wait, so we
exercise.
don't die, we're just going to keep coming back.
Mangabe sikholwa ukuthi khona idlozi, then we really don't die. If we don't believe idlozi likhona, then we really die. But for me, it's like we graduate. You know, I remember Gogo saying something when we lost a very close relative, and she was like, of course, Aishong is Zulu, but something like, Miegeni, because now she's going to form part of a greater network of divinities that would make bigger interventions on our behalf. So in other words, mangabe ngithi kunzima like akukho kuzwana. A living person in the body is going to be like, let's have a meeting. We try to resolve the problem. But when someone is an ancestor, umsamo, and report the same thing, the intervention is deeper. Because their network is big. The problem is resolved.
Now, you know, there's this thing that we were kings as Black people, right? So if our ancestors were kings, why do you think we're still struggling then?
I don't know if we're all kings, though.
Oh, maybe, okay.
You know, I'm grappling with that idea that, you know, but I think there's something to it. I mean, history tells us that, you know, we come from kingdoms at least. But the fact that we're all kings might, you know...
Maybe not all kings, but...
I think it doesn't mean like literally. It's just like we were living well, we were enough. There wasn't poverty, crime, and all those things. And where have we lost it? Yes, get here. That's what...
And our ancestors, you know, wherever they are, I'm sure wouldn't want this for their children or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, in some of my work, I've been feeling that the fact that umsamo awaziwa, and umsamo is just one component, creates a kind of exile between us and the spirit worlds.
What's umsamo?
Umsamo is a sacred location in Ndlini.
Like a shrine.
A shrine.
Okay.
It's a shrine, yeah.
Yes.
So So but the fact that asazi nokuthi sothini masiyakhona suggests that there has been a divide in the language. So even if our ancestors could make interventions on our behalf, asina language. Yokubatshela ngoba bafuna sisho. That's one. Two, we have to remember that we have very angry ancestors that die in these conditions.
Sure.
That even though we do all of these things and ask for these things from our ancestors, but we also need to think about our ancestors as needing us as well. Because there is a tendency of going to umsamo, hey, umsebenzi, but sometimes I think we need to think about that, how troubled that world is as well, our ancestral dimension. I don't think it's the most free world.
Why?
So,
Like, why do you say that?
These people depart in these traumas. And it echoes into their next movement.
Is it not a fresh start, perhaps?
No, it's not. A fresh start comes with the calling. That's why being Bizo. It's a calling. So in terms of like the spirituality, they say kukhona indawo yezilo. So you don't immediately become an ancestor.
Gotcha.
Also, an ancestor is not necessarily Itongo, which is a much greater divinity. So there are systems. Amatongo would look at much greater things like the well-being of a village, weather conditions. Those are big climate. Those are big concepts. Whereas Idlozi looks
like a Queen Mujaji.
Right. Queen Mujaji is a divinity. She regulates the rain. She regulates fertility. Those are much bigger concepts. Idlozi is still very much linked to their blood. That's why Mawibizi Idlozi Shibongo, to connect that technology of surnames, to invoke the connection. So what I'm trying to say is that we have to think a bit deeper about the fact that not all of them are ready to do things for us. Ugogo ebejwayela ukuthi when she was still alive, sibiza labo abahle umsamo, because there are ancestors that are not good as well, that are still kind of troubled by their own things and they're working on their own journeys. So masobabiza ukuthi washona sisiyambiza. Sometimes it's busy into enzima la endlini.
So how would you know, Elisha, like a good ancestor? Is it based on the kind of life they lived? MacG.
I'm good.
Like, how do you know though? Because with us, you'll call. With us, you more pasha, you'll just call abomkhulu, those that you know, those that obviously you've heard, some you may not even have met. Right. How do you know a good, ancestor from a toxic one, if I can put it like that?
So each family has got what in West Africa they would call like a griot, like a knowledge keeper. And that's why umsamo in modern societies is really troubled, because there is no custodian. So a custodian is umuntu ozositshela ukuthi la ekhaya umndeni wala ekhaya umkanje, and give a whole organogram of the structures. Because even when you invoke the ancestors, there is a hierarchy that you need to observe. So awukwazi ukubiza leli before leli. There is a kind of hierarchy. We have to consult the network chronologically.
Jeez.
So, we're all grappling with these things because of modernity. But what I'm trying to say to kind of respond to your question is that it is difficult to know, because a lot of these practices were anchored in some deep knowledges that have been eroded. And now we are just doing it intuitively, and we are bound to make many mistakes. So
is how someone lived an indicator though of whether they could, like, if someone was a murderer, for example, or just a wicked person, is it then safe to assume that it's a toxic ancestor?
That's why I get the problem yet is our lack of knowledge of the systems. Umuntu, for instance, obebulala abantu already before they leave or depart or they get killed. Ngasekhaya kuzothiwa, hey, usibanibani akaseyena umuntu. Like when someone does an evil act.
Yeah, so moon. Yeah, I've heard
so,
of
but
that
what
before.
does that mean? It means that being human is a project that is ongoing, and you go in and out of it by way of your actions. So mabu umuntu eshone nalama actions ongabi umuntu, they are not acknowledged as a person. So before that person gets buried, kuyahamba kuyocelwa kulungiswe leza zinto, because there is no way. That's why kukhona umlahlankosi, for instance, if someone dies in an accident, kuyahamba kuyolanda umoya. So there are all of these practices. We can't just be going to umsamo and deny an entire lexicon of ideas that surround indigenous African knowledge systems. So as far as we have to consult a very, very deep take into what it means to be an African when it comes to spiritual enunciations.
I want to ask you. Okay, go ahead.
Hey.
I'm curious. The question I want to ask you. Go ahead.
No, I just heard, maybe it's the same question you're going to ask. How about those who don't have that knowledge keeper? Like you find families that, or just people that now they are left with just, it's maybe kids in the family, you know, they don't have that elder who can pass on that knowledge and give them that family tree and the orders of how everything works. Where do they start now? What do they do?
Yeah, this is what I meant by the fact that we're all grappling. I'm one of those, for instance. I'm one of those, abantu abaningi abasekho ekhaya, and I'm still trying to teach my kids these things, and they're like, Dad, that's super boring. So there is that problem. There is that problem. But I think the biggest question will be, what do we do as African peoples in terms of like cultivating our own religiosities? In the same way that a Christian goes every Sunday and reads the scripture, and if you open the scripture, they know it back and forth. They can tell you, like, the First Testament deals with these concepts. This author was dealing with this. Revelations, for instance, deals with this. So I'm afraid that when it comes to African knowledge, it's very abstract the way we deal with it. We are gloya umuntu athi no shabi inkukhu zibe mbili ushaya enye uyigwazela ngemuva. It's like very abstract. And this is why I'm saying, like, it's something that it's our project. We need to document first and foremost. Yes. We need to document our history, our lineage, but also we need to think more critically about religiosities in Africa. I mean, for instance, I've been interested in umthandazo wesintu thini. One of the things that I found was that imthandazo yethu ayivali awukho amen. And then I was looking into this concept of an amen. This concept of an amen as this end and a closure. And thina asuvali umthandazo wethu. Akushiwo.
Imithandazo, they don't say amen.
No, asivali. And that speaks to our uthi manje.
Hayi mega.
You know that song that comes at Limtunzi? Imithandazo. They don't say amen.
No, but right. You being naughty. But yeah, so I think that's where we're at. This is partly why, like, you know, we're trying to document. Like, for me, being in academia was part of being against academia. Was like
your calling, yeah.
Yeah, when I worked at Vets, I couldn't wait to get fired because I feel like if you're doing transformative work, you shouldn't be able to live in these institutions too long.
What is the correlation between Africanism and sex?
Sorry?
Africanism and sex, according to what you read. What is the...
And sex?
Yeah.
Is it just purely for reproduction?
Or spirituality and sex? You know, sometimes when people speak of what ties soul ties, etc. You know.
Yeah. Well, you know, I never thought about this, but I think
this is just your opinion.
Yeah, my opinion, and of course, like, you know, maskuluma even nangumshado. There is a question there, like this idea: is it African or not? Yeah. So it's a challenge. But if we can think at least from the notion of ilobodo,
yes,
and the significance of inkomo ekhaya, and that whole process of like ngizolobola. Because one of the things that we say masolobola sithi uzongakhela ikhaya lika baba. And this is why like people would take the surname of ubaba wekhaya ngoba uzongakhela ikhaya lika baba. So iy'ngane lezi ezalwayo ngizalela ubaba wami. So I think for me that would be the closest I would come to then the practice, the actual, you know,
fornication.
Not fornication, but I don't know what to call it. But I would say
Tough.
Let's say ritual. Let's say it speaks to Inkaba, it speaks to origin, it speaks to Ubaba, Okzalayo, it speaks to continuity, it speaks to immortality, and how do we like extend it's Zulu. Wow, it's so profound actually. Sithi Ukzala Ukzelula.
Yeah.
So like I would think of it as a way of stretching our thoughts.
What does that mean? Translation?
Ukzala kuzelula. It's
Giving birth to a child is a
really
way of
deep.
extending yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or stretching yourself,
Got you.
your vision,
Got
or
you.
your ideas. So I would think then these are part of the rituals. You know, I wouldn't want to call it what you called it, but I think these are part of the rituals that speak to the
So
cosmology.
when you see now that people are just doing it to make money, and
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the one to judge what people are doing, but I think it has its own pleasures that operate outside of the framework I've just explained. That in itself, aesthetically, is still maybe good. But I think it's deeper when aesthetic speaks to the very idea of being in the world. So that's how I would differentiate the two.
explain that, Sol.
Hey, nami ngithemekile mfana. Hey, nami ngithemekile. It's a process. Hey, nami ngithemekile.
No, I would say what I'm trying to say is sex as a practice, as a thing that people do,
Yes.
has its instant pleasure
Yes.
in doing it.
Yes. Got you.
So the aesthetic is in the beauty of doing it.
It's profound.
It's profound
It's-
outside of the ritual aspects of it. When you do it informed by all of these concepts that I've been explaining, then I want to categorize it as a kind of ritual
I
that escapes just the fact that it's actually nice.
Yeah. Ghost lady. Last question.
Answered it beautifully.
I thought you were prepared for it.
No, abangijelanga ngale.
Ghost lady.
Okay, so I think it's your 2015 album. It was called what's this?
Listening to the ground.
But it was
Matunda ya Kwanza.
Kwanza.
Yeah.
And I just want to understand, and if you can give us an explanation of Kwanza, because from my understanding, it's kind of like an African Christmas.
Right.
So we have, although now how we celebrate Christmas is adopting the Western way, Christmas tree. What is the African form? How do you celebrate Christmas? What's the African way?
Yo, she's so deep.
Yeah.
She's so deep. Yeah. I think, you know, the origins of Kwanzaa were really around umkhosi wekushwama. NgesiZulu sithi umkhosi wekushwama, where abantu baseSwazini bayeza nomkhosi kaNomkhubulwane kube nentombi.
Yes.
I think you should come check it out.
Yeah.
Umkhosi wekushwama is the celebration of the first fruits. But it was a way of...
Is that the one where they are all naked, ne?
They're not naked.
They're not naked.
You can miss us.
That's
Yeah,
all place.
No, they're not naked.
You can miss us.
So umkhosi wekushwama basically is a way to honor Mujaji, to honor uNomkhubulwane.
Yes.
But much broader, to honor birth and fertility, not only of the body, but of the soil, to honor the things that come out of the production. So we celebrate that as a way, and also it's not in December, it comes around January on the other side of the calendar. And the problem again of like Christmas as a concept is that it's a very North
Yes,
not
Western.
than concept. I mean, for instance, when I was a kid, we used to sing some song called "Busika e Bethlehem" and stuff, and we're singing that song in summer, and we're wearing very warm clothes. Must celebrate ukuzalwa kaJesu. So that already tells us something quite crazy about the calendar and the fact that why are we wearing warm clothes in summer?
So the Christmas she's talking about, that you spoke about, we don't celebrate it anymore. Like, it's non-existent.
No, there is still Christmas on the 25th, but she's making juxtapositions between that version of Christmas versus our own. I wouldn't say Christmas for us. I would say festivities.
Okay.
Because that's what it's called for us. Asisho to Christmas. This is when people exchange izipho.
Yeah.
Sounds like Christmas.
Yeah. But bro, we're trying to be African. Please, like, let us be on this agenda.
Yes.
So, you know, the exchange of our gifts, there are some symbolic things that would happen. Abantu, when they are celebrating the first fruits, part of what they would do is the first fruits were not really to be like eaten by people. But I think that's already the idea of Christmas is like about consumption. But we say with our version, it's more about giving and honoring.
The white one is...
Yeah. And it takes money from us. It does all of these things. It does all of these things that are, you know, and we get really crazy as well.
Capitalist.
So I would say...
I mean, Mariah Carey, till this day, she doesn't release a song. She makes some money from the Christmas song.
Can you see?
Every year.
And what our own, like, we don't have even our own Christmas carols.
No.
It's a challenge. So Matunde Akwanza...
You struggle to play an African song in Christmas. You struggle.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't fit. And the whole mood, like those songs... I'm not saying there's something, but there's just like a way in which they tame us and arrest our bodies and our thinking faculty. And I mean, I might be wrong, but for me, it's the whole church music in a Western sense that does that to me. It creates a kind of fatigue.
So let's do a Christmas song.
Whereas Kumatunde Akwanza...
We ain't gonna do no Christmas song, man. I'm not him, man. You know, no ways. I'm not him.
Him, as in like the hymn. He's talking, bro. Boss. Him.
I'm not him, bro. Try somebody else.
I'm not him. Yes. So, but I mean, when we think about Matunde Akwanza, it's the celebration, the charms, it's the dancing. No, mama bajabulile intombi zihloliwe konke kujajuliwe kuhle. So, but I mean, slowly we're losing those practices as well. So when I released that album, I was like kind of thinking about displacement and the diasporas and their own challenges with regards to how do we celebrate that moment.
But you're right, man. There's nowhere you can go to find out about our African ways. You always hear it's passed down from generations.
Right, oral histories.
Yeah, it's like your grandmother tell you, no, you need to do this if this happens.
Yeah.
But if we lose that, then like it's crazy, man. It's not documented.
Our knowledge is but what it suggests is that like the way that we acquire knowledge is by way of itinerary, by way of walking, by way of practice. But people don't walk anymore. They're driving.
Yeah.
So I think there is some kind of modifications that we have to do now in terms of even that knowledge. Iba pure in its traditional context. So I'm just thinking, what are some of the ways that we can modify these things so that they function and they are kept alive?
And I got so many questions, man, when it comes to Africanacity. I got so many questions.
It's difficult.
Yeah, but anyway, your last question.
Yeah. What's the relationship between Ubungoma and music? Because like Ingoma, we call it Ingoma and then Izangoma. You know, is that just like a coincidence? Is there any relation?
It's not. So the word Ngoma is shared by all Bantu speaking people, even in Central Africa and East Africa.
Wow.
They say Ngoma. But what Ngoma is really, it's divination, prophecy, the charm, dancing, music. So in most African languages, we don't find a singular word for music. I mean, of course, when you deal with the etymology of the word ukucula, it doesn't really sound. That's not really a Zulu word. So there is a challenge that when we think about music in the concept of a Western concept, it's all about sound. But when we're thinking about ngoma, we're thinking about healing practices, prophecies, the charms. In the same way, Kaswana, they say koma. Koma sabadimo. Yeah. So koma means truth as well.
Oh, wow.
Koma, when they say koma, they're saying song, but they're saying dance, healing, truth. So I think as soon as we go back to our own concepts, there is what I would propose as a holism, that our words are more richer than English words. But when we say music, iyalimala. But when we say ngoma, we realize that we have to heal through this thing. We have to bring prophecy.
It's got a meaning, a deeper meaning.
Right.
And I can attest to this. It's the craziest thing. Yeah. So I can't dance for shit. Like, I'm a terrible dancer, right? So last year we're doing.
Why are you asking us about dancing then?
No, I want to tell you what happened. So bear in mind, I don't know anything about dancing. I don't care. I never do these TikTok challenges. I'm not for it. It's not my thing, right? So last year we had a year-end function. We were booked at this lodge and they had a performance for us. So they got some of the people from around that village to come and do the whole traditional thing, right? Wow. So part of their whole thing was for us to partake in it.
Right.
And so there I am, I'm busy going, I don't know what I'm doing, you know? For like 10 minutes. I kid you not. After that, I felt weird. Like there was a spirit.
Yes. But why do you say weird? Why do you say weird?
But I'm saying I've never felt that feeling before. But
altered state.
Yeah.
You felt an altered state.
Yes. I kid you not.
But I think you should do it again.
So that's why I understand when you talk about dancing. Like it was like, yo, man, this is crazy.
Oh, hence your question.
Yeah,
well, that's spiritual.
Right. Yes, bro, I was in it. I'm like, and then after I'm like, yo, I feel good, man.
Oh, you felt good. Oh, you felt good. Oh, weird and good. Oh,
but also, you know when people say this like lightly and say like dancing your problems away or something like that.
Yeah.
I think there's some truth in that.
I believe it.
In a way that like when you dance, there's a feeling of surrender.
Yes.
And I think some of the danceness that we have is because we don't dance.
And the thing is, when you dance, there's no judgment. Like you can do any move, no one will judge you. But you're doing your thing. Something.
Yeah. So I think this feeling of surrender is necessary. And I feel like for men, even more importantly, because sibambe into eziningi, you know. But sifuna inkonzo yensizwa sizobuye si-organize. But I think this feeling of surrender is so necessary.
No, I felt that
for us. Yeah.
Ghost Lady, yeah? Last question.
Earlier you spoke about that jazz when it started.
Right.
It was a form of protest and obviously just a kind of like whatever the social issues and ills, whether it was the slavery, whatever people were trying to just speak, through the music. Now let's fast forward to now and looking at that, like you said, you did even mention that now these days you don't get like big jazz concerts or just platforms. Right. What social ills would it help if we got the platforms? If you had the opportunity to have these, like even back you said is here in it's with Newtown, where you said they used to be, but now they don't have. Yeah. So like with the current, what's happening now? Where could it be a help and where could be kind of be a form of expression?
Well, I guess like it's still very much happening. I think the trouble is with post-coloniality, because when we say something is post, there is a suggestion that you've gone beyond that thing. So it's difficult to deal with Black problems in that dimension of post-coloniality, because on the one hand, we feel that we've really reached this democratic South Africa. So it's hard for messages to be as explicit as those of Miriam Makeba or Baba Masegela, who's just saying Ipunu, whatever, you know. Like it's hard to be that explicit now because a lot of it is kind of hidden.
cancel culture.
Right.
Tries to be
It's
very
really
sensitive.
difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going after this to a jazz concert, like the Jove Jazz, and playing there. The message is there, but I think the message is watered down.
Yes.
There are people that are still advocating.
That's why I asked.
We
like,
might
with the
find
current
that
issues,
the contents that are inherent in the Amapiano would possibly be some of the dopest,
I agree.
the deepest messages we have in
Deepest.
terms of Africanness.
Okay.
Deepest.
And because jazz is a quote unquote intellectual music, maybe sometimes we overemphasize that, but maybe we need to learn. Maybe it's time for jazz musicians to collaborate as a way to kind of like listen much deeper.
Bro,
to
if you
what's
listen to the
happening.
messages,
No,
that piano
I
songs
do.
have-
I do.
Powerful, man. Powerful, bro.
I do.
And what, like,
And we dismiss them. And when I say this, I mean like my community I know wouldn't spend time listening to Amapiano.
what's up with the jazz community? They're very stuck up, man, and very snobbish. No, on the real. And you know, you're so open-minded, and
Yeah.
for them, it's like they think they're like the prefects of,
Right.
you know, music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's why it doesn't grow.
Jazz police.
Yes, you know, and that's why maybe it doesn't grow as much. That's why, like Black Hawk was saying, there's only 5 people at a show, whatever, because they like being so exclusive. A lot of them would look down on a person who programs their music on a
Right.
Fruity Loops.
So I think this is the problem of commodification. Again, when jazz became a commodity, it had to have some kind of exclusivity. And this was a whole design by the global north, the Western world. They had to think about how do we put it in the market now? First, it has to be expensive, it has to be exclusive, and all of these things. The earlier jazz musicians were people that were playing for dancers, like I was saying earlier. But we don't play for dancers because we feel like, yo, dude, come on, I'm playing jazz.
Yeah.
So
Jazz
I
cats.
think there is an urgency to update.
the system.
Yeah, we need to really update and start realizing that abantu that are doing all of these things and having numbers, those numbers need some of our messaging as well.
I'm telling you, piano, the message is crazy.
No, man.
There's
Like I'm checking it out. It's like, and in the Tongo, it's quite evident there. In the Bayezozi, and
It's big.
There's a song I did, right? And I'm not pushing the song, right?
you can push it.
Push!
There's a song I did with what's the name? Yeah, Timen SA, ne? And Star Healer. It's called Imizwayami.
Right.
That song is so powerful. This girl she's speaking about how much she loves this guy, and she wishes like she was in his body.
Right.
Like whatever he's feeling, she wants to
Angene.
feel Angene. Like
Damn,
that's how
bro.
much
That's
it's
intense.
so
Listen to that song. Damn.
bro, it's deep.
You
It
think
never
the song-
yeah?
Is that the one you did?
Yeah, no, I just put my name on it. It's you know. But what I'm trying to say is that the songs like that, I mean, obviously it didn't blow up or whatever, but like and Mintandazo, even soul song.
The Kabang.
The Kabang. You
Yeah.
can explain like what that
Kabang
song is about.
It speaks about like what we spoke about earlier on, in fact, the breakdown of families. And sometimes it happens because of migrant working.
Right.
There's uncles and aunts who are in Joburg who left in the 80s and built new lives. And then just jealousy, animosity, where abomalume, abasazwane, you know?
Big
and that's
song,
all.
2 million streams.
2 million, big song. You played it in the club.
It's a big song.
That was unheard of
Yeah.
a while ago to play something like that that's got such a message
Dance, yeah.
in a club. You know what I mean? Huge message, but and it's dancey. You play it in the club, people dance, celebrate, drink, but the message, and people are playing it for their families
And
now
I think it became big because of the message.
because of the message.
Because it's so profound.
Exactly. That's piano.
But I think we also underestimate the audience that dances, that go to these clubs.
Oh yeah, for real?
Those people are going there seeking something.
For real.
That's why, really, those are seekers. Often those people, there's something really deep and so when they hear something like, it speaks to them. It's like, because of the lives that they're living. And sometimes, you know, in a jazz setup, people go, and again, this whole idea of aesthetic, it sounds beautiful.
They're not just trying to get bums.
Which is,
I'm talking about the people at night who are seeking something. It needs to be
Well,
perfect.
that could be. I don't know. I said people are seeking something.
Okay, you didn't say what. You didn't say what.
And I did
the
not
key.
limit,
Yes.
but the
Okay, got
dimension
you.
of seeking is
Got you.
endless. I don't
Yes,
want to,
yes,
but
yeah.
I'm just talking
I
about,
got
you
you.
know,
It makes a lot of sense. That's why even
Yes.
gospel slaps.
this dude can like change anything you say to something else.
Yeah, we must.
And I've been like told so many times this week because I told people I'm seeing the bros. They like check him out.
Watch out.
Yes,
It makes sense
right.
why, because it started off as a joke, but it makes sense why gospel songs or spiritual gospel songs slap at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m.
Bro.
That thing DJ
Right.
started doing of playing
Wibambi.
those songs at like 3 a.m. and everybody's in a trance.
Right, that's exactly it. Because those people are seeking. They're seeking, and I think our problem, maybe as jazz musicians, is we've not figured out a way of playing for those people.
Got you.
Beyond judging them. So there's a sense that we are not understood.
Yes.
And I don't think it's quite an accurate thing that we are not understood. Because jazz has a history of being understood. But we like not to be understood because then it puts us on a different rank.
Pedestal,
Yeah. So my thing now, especially working with all the pros in other genres, I'm just like, man, how can we really like come together and figure out what the sounds of the future are?
Are you
Like-
related to Scoop MAKHATHINI? Because it's not far-fetched. I'd believe that.
I think when I spoke to him, well, maybe he should explain it himself, but I think he said it was just a stage name.
Whoa!
Well, but I don't want to.
Yeah,
I don't want to be. I don't want to be quoted for certain stuff.
You literally, like he's your boy. You say one good ass.
So MAKHATHINI is not his name.
No, I don't think it is. No,
Stage
name. It's a
yeah,
stage name.
it's not definitely not his name, but I don't know if it ties into his family or ancestry or whatever.
yes,
But it is
yes.
a stage name.
Okay.
I just don't know how deep it gets.
Yeah, I just didn't want to be quoted because that's what I. Because when I saw him, I was like, oh, Kappa shit on the You were like, bro, say what? I was like, Nina, la shapa ngavela abantu untuli kawubongo. He's like, oh yeah, what's up, and how you doing? Then I asked him, hey bro, are you a MAKHATHINI? Yeah. But like he's a cool bro, and someone as well who's thinking about the similar thing.
Yes,
He's talking
yes,
about-
yes,
like
big
when
time.
me and him find a moment, bro,
Curtains.
it's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone. I love that cat so much.
Same
I love
here,
it. I
man.
love him so much.
In closing, Buti MAKHATHINI,
Because yeah,
what do you
is
want to
it.
be? Yeah, what do you want to be remembered as? That is it.
say that again.
What do you want to be remembered as when it's all said and done?
Oh man. Well, I think if my songs could outlive me or my writing, I think that would be the ultimate for me, not to be remembered, actually. For these things to be more important than the body that kind of created them.
Beautiful.
Yeah, if my works could be remembered.
You sound like Nati, eh? Like you got the same dialect when you guys speak. Have you heard?
Yeah.
You sound like Nati, man.
Yeah. No, yeah, I guess there is a connection. I really look up to him. Like, you know.
But he's done so. Like when you go overseas and stuff, like he's really that guy, ne?
No, he is that dude. Like when I was in Bogota in particular,
Colombia.
yeah, people were like, man, we saw on your biography, you worked with Black. Oh, man. Wow, and of course, like he called me and was like trying to tell me places to go. I was like, eesh. Yeah, but he's a very supportive, like before I came here, he posted my entire tour schedule, like just randomly.
Wow.
So that's the amount of love. I mean, of course, like the people that follow him maybe at dance, but I just thought, wow, this cat, like he's got millions of followers, and he put my tour schedule there. You know, it's like, so definitely, man, one of my biggest inspirations, and people that I love.
Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate
And
it.
enjoyed
man.
this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Ngiyabonga ukuthi ngeke bangishaye ekhaya likhipha uthi ngilenzile.
Nah, you're good now.
Mase ngivalelisa nje ngibonga umama wekhaya. Unomagugu, ngibonga izingane, ngibonga uNayila, uThingo, uMoyo, ngibonga umama uNoma Jerusalem nabo bonke amathongo abheke lo msebenzi.
Welcome to Black Excellence. Do not fear, for if you do, just sip on some grandeur. And if you still do, ask ourselves, what would Mapapunzi do? Parama chilla, itlasha lefiki. Ungoyigi, even when they ask you, how sabiini, do not fear. For if you do, just say, Anistivi. This is the medicine of censorship. This is the pill. Which one is that one? Podcast and chill.